Due to the violent nature of some scenes in this video, viewer discretion is advised.
I see you're back for another episode of Monster Lab. I think you're gonna like it. I bet you can't guess what it is. Ah! Ah! A bloody eyeball. Let's get started.
Out of your body.
Going down?
Where do you shop for shoes, by the way? Anyway, we normally do a lot bigger stuff at Distortions, but this is good practice to go start to finish really fast, and we're gonna give it a try. Here we go. So I've got just a piece of plywood here and a couple of screws, and this is just to hold it down to the board so it's not moving around on you. And I'm going to leave them stick up a little. If you have just one screw, it can kind of spin. So 2 screws, and that's going to hold my eyeball on. So the eyeball, let's see now, let's get a realistically sized eyeball. And I always go a little big, like maybe 10%, because stuff shrinks. The rubber shrinks when it comes out of the mold, and if you decide you want to make a bunch of them, you make a second mold. I think that looks pretty good. It's very important to make sound effects when you're sculpting. Let's see. Now also, this is going to be a one-piece mold, and I'll be filling it from the bottom, so I've got to make sure that the hole's not too small to get stuff out. So this one, I'm going to make it kind of like the eye's been plucked out and it pulled a bunch of junk with it. The optic nerve, the muscles and stuff, so it's going to have a little length. That's my goal. Also, you'll want to put some clay when you have a gap. You want to put some clay like that. So everything has to go down to the table because you can't pull it out if there's an air gap there. And I don't want to do that quite perfectly centered. The eyeball is a pretty amazing thing. However, mine's not going to be that amazing. It doesn't work. And what's really helpful when you're doing anatomy, which is most of the time, by the way, even when you're doing monsters, it needs to be anatomically believable. You can find pictures of everything. And I've done enough eyes in my day that I'm not worried about it, but normally it's a really good idea, and your sculpts just turn out so much better if you've taken the time to research a little bit and have the pictures with you. Now, this tool that I'm using right now, I use an awful lot. And it's a little finger tool. I use this point to create lines, and I use this curve section it's like a mini finger. This I'm going to use next, and this is great for smoothing out planes because my circle is not perfect. So by raking first one direction and then another, and it's not necessarily perfect crisscross, it can be angles and stuff, you can start to get it more smooth. And all the little lines you cut in, you can smooth those right out later. But I love this tool. It's really, it's a wonderful tool. So I'm just working these muscles a little bit, try to make them look interesting. That's one thing I do when I'm sculpting. I'm always looking for interesting lines and that are artistic and fun. And a lot of times I'll push reality to do that. But I think most of art pushes reality. Even if it's photorealist, you know, Rembrandt kind of stuff, it still pushes reality in some way. But that's artistic. No difference when it comes to monster or monster props. Let's see, we'll flip this up a little. That'll be nasty. Doing some little tear marks here in the end. I'm going to smooth the eye with this sponge. Now the sponge, I don't like to get sculpture too wet because then you end up with mush. So you get a sponge like this, has a little texture, is very nice, kind of organic. It isn't organic, but it's nice, and you put it in the water and then squeeze hard. And I've already smoothed it with the rake, so now I just have to get out the rake marks. And one thing I realize I've forgotten is a paintbrush. Hold on. Here it is. Here's what I want. Okay. So this is just a fairly soft bristle. It's got a little stiffness to it. But you dip that in the water, and then you can come in and kind of take away any roughness. Now, a certain amount of roughness is good, so you don't want to take it all away. And if you've got some real fine detail, you can actually dip it in the water and then get some of that water out so that it doesn't take away too much. Because if you get a real wet brush in there, you're going to start losing detail. So the other thing that I use a lot in sculpting is a hairdryer. Now the thing will dry out by itself, but it's nice if you're working on something small like this to move it down the road. So we're going to heat this up a little bit. That helps a lot. Now this last tool I'm using here is a very, very fine little wire tool, and that you can go in for real fine detail. but also this, you can go in for fine detail. All right, so we're almost done. You know, it's funny to put so much time into something that just makes a child scream. I mean, it doesn't have to be that detailed. You just give them a scream and go, but you never know who's going to look at it. Steven Spielberg, you know, something like that. So you want to go ahead and make it look nice, even though realistically, it doesn't have to be that amazing. Another consideration when you're sculpting, if you use the rub out paint technique, where you spray on rubbing alcohol, then rub it off, it's a good idea to make these lines deeper than reality so that they'll grab that rub out when you rub off the surface stuff, and it just looks much better. Also, you know, stuff wears out, the plaster wears out, so it's good to have deeper lines, and you know, it just makes life look a little bit better, or non-life, or death in this case. I don't know if the guy that owned this eyeball is still alive, but he's probably pretty mad if he is. All right, so we're done. Now, I'm going to dry it a little more. We're going to get the plaster and cast this thing real fast. Okay, so one of the questions we get a lot is, where do you get the clay? Now, what I like to use is Laguna Wed Clay, Walter Disney it stands for. Now, they are in the City of Industry, California. Their phone number is 1-800-4-LAGUNA, and Laguna is spelled Laguna, Laguna. Here's just the numbers. And this is, you can dial direct, 626-330-0631, Laguna Clay. Now let me tell you, this stuff is amazing. That's what the box looks like. You can use other stuff. I wouldn't. Okay, so I've got plaster here, and I have water. Now I've poured some water in here, probably more than enough. And the plaster is USG pottery plaster. Works very, very well. So what I'm going to do is just take handfuls of this plaster and kind of shift it in to the water. And you always want to add the plaster to the water, just for the record, because it doesn't work very, very well the other way around. Not that it won't work, just doesn't work very well. And my goal here is to form islands on the surface of the water, kind of overall the top of the water. And the mixture, you know, it comes on the bag. It's like a 30-70 mixture. You know, rubber and plaster. I have a wonderful relationship with those two things. They're both amazing. I mean, they're natural products that come out of the earth, well, rubber comes from a rubber tree. And boy, you can do so much with them. And I can't imagine a world without those two things. I've got a DVD. I think it's called something like The Rubber Tree, the Tree That Changed the World or something, and boy, it did. Cars, but also monsters. Okay, so it's good to let this sit a little while, but since we're all in a hurry, I'm going to stir this up. And you can let it set for a minute or two, something like that. Now, if you're real neat and you don't like to get your hands dirty, this isn't for you. But if you like your molds perfect, I like to stir. See, I'm finding all sorts of lumps in here. See this? And so I can feel those lumps. I could stir longer and maybe they'd all go away, but maybe not. Another thing that I've shown in other videos is if I have the time, I will spray paint this and let the spray paint sit for, 4 hours or overnight or something, because that's just easier to clean the mold. But since we're trying to get done fast, there's no time for that. The other thing that you want to watch, you don't want the clay to get too dry, because then it sucks the water out of the plaster, and it's okay. I mean, you get enough plaster and they'll be all right, but it's better if the clay, especially if it's not painted with spray paint. And I use Krylon, leather brown. I'm sure other colors would work, but once you find something that works, you just kind of stick with it. And so I like to, go both directions. Make sure you've got it, brush it good. You don't want to wear down your sculpture, but you do want to make sure you've got plaster in every single crack. Another thing I've shown in videos is using hemp. This mold's so small, it just doesn't need it. We can make it plenty thick. Now, I'm at a point where I'm moving faster than the plaster. And so we're going to stop the camera for a minute because I've got to wait for it to catch up. Now, if I was doing a big body or something, well, I'd be chasing the plaster. But right now, the plaster is too slow for what I'm doing. So we're going to let this start to thicken, and I'll be right back. So it's getting a little thicker. I'm going to put a little more on. We'll see if I have to stop cameras again, but I can get a little more on here. If it gets to the point where it's running off, we'll stop them again. Okay, we're going to stop one more time. When I come back, it'll be nice and thick, like, well, this is about like mayonnaise now. It'll be thick like cookie dough, and then we'll finish up. Okay, so now it's getting nice and thick. And this is another thing Distortions does that is arguably, other companies don't do this. I understand that. It saves plaster. But we tend to make our molds bigger and thicker than they need to be just because they seem to last longer. They've got more absorption power. Plus, they're just stronger. So that doesn't mean it's right. That just means we do it that way. So we're going to have, we got a little teeny eyeball in here, and we're going to have a big old mold. The mold will probably, by the time I get this all on, it'll probably weigh about 150 pounds. I'm just kidding. Okay. Believe me, we have molds that weigh way more than 150 pounds. We had an alien mold that we had to have like 4 car tires. One was strapped to the wall, and we had 4 car tires to move it in. It was crazy. Now see, it's getting kind of, doughy almost, like it doesn't flow anymore, but this is fine. You've already got your detail, you brush in that detail nicely, and this is just making sure you got a good strong mold. All right. One thing, we used to have a professional mold maker, this wonderful guy, Ken Stenell, and he said that a lot of people like to smooth their molds out by wetting it and it gets it nice and smooth, but it's not good. It kind of closes the pores down so it doesn't breathe as well. So I would resist the urge to do that. Just smooth it out and you'll be fine. And also you can do some fancy stuff you want. You can make this flat, and so it sits nice and flat on the table, and things like that. As you move on down the road, and we do more of these, because my goal with Monster Lab is just take everything in my brain and take it out and put it on video. So you can start your own mask company. You can make any kind of monster you can dream of. That's the goal, because I'm not living forever. Hopefully quite a while, but this to me is art, and I see CGI's fine, it's fine, and doing things on computer art and now with 3D printers, that's all great, but there's something about working with natural products in the three-dimensional world that is wonderful. And I don't want that to get lost forever. I don't think it will, but it's certainly, the world's changing. Now I am going to go ahead and flatten this out, just because when you fill it with latex, it'll sit there nice. And to do that, just scrape it both directions as level as you can. And so if you use the mold a bunch, it'll be nice. That's it. Now we're gonna let this harden. I'm gonna get the clay out, and we're gonna fill it with latex, coming right up. Oh, little dust. Okay, so now the mold, I've let it sit here for about a half hour or so. It's not a bad idea to let it sit a little longer, but we're trying to move things right along. Now this could be a screwdriver or whatever, but you just want to get this mold, the vacuum, taken care of. All I want to do is break this vacuum and to get it off. And so pull it off the nails, and there's the clay. Now, this tool is really nice because it's got this nice smooth round edge, so you don't have to worry about tearing up your plaster. But always be aware of your sculpture so that you're not dinging up the plaster. And I like to push it in, pull it toward you, and then pop it. And that helps. Every time you pull it, it helps break the vacuum a little bit on the clay. This is where, if you painted it, it would be better. But it's coming out all right. That's the eyeball. Now, another tool for smaller spaces is this little guy. And it's still nice and rounded, but it'll get into tighter spots. Because even on a big sculpture, you're going to have little points in the ears and different things. But every time I pull, I come up with a quick motion, hoping to kind of break that vacuum. If you have access to compressed air, that can also help to blow out the clay a little bit. It's very effective. Just be sure and wear goggles if you do that. So now I'm going to go get some latex and I'll be right back. Okay, so now I have the magic juice. Now this is mask making latex. You can get it a lot of places. So the mold is clean. However, if you paint it, it's sparkling white. The paint seals the clay and doesn't leave any residue, but it doesn't matter. It will absorb. So the idea is to just pick a spot and fill the mold up. And then you wait. Now what happens while you're waiting is the plaster absorbs the liquid in the latex and it leaves a layer of latex that's been absorbed. So the longer the latex sits, the thicker it gets, just like slip in pottery. So we're going to let this sit, maybe an hour, just to be sure, because the mold's wet, and so it's probably not going to suck as fast as it could. But anyway, we'll be back to pour this out, and we'll see you then. All right, that should be long enough. Now, everything that isn't against the walls of the mold will pour out, so you can reuse that latex. Again, just like slip in pottery. Now I'm going to let this set upside down so that it can drain for, do that for 5-10 minutes, and then I'm going to flip it up and put a fan on it. Okay, so it's dried out now, and it's in the mold, and all the latex is out. It's just got a little shell. Now I like to just take a little plaster, same plaster you make the mold with, works very well. Put a little in there, blow out the excess. And that keeps the rubber from sticking to itself, which is very important. So we just peel it out. And there it is, your little eyeball. So, next step is to, I filled it pretty carefully, but there's still a little flange. That's got to go. So do these scissors, geez. Now I tell you what, scissors get abused around here. We probably cut wire with these or something. All right, so that looks good. So now we're going to take this piece and take it upstairs and paint it. Here we go. Okay, so we're ready to paint. Now, I've got these big quartz sprayers that obviously you don't need for a little thing like this, but that's what we use, and that's what it's going to be. So this is our latex, paint, and water mixture that is explained on different episodes, but it's basically 1 part water, 1 part latex house paint of any color you choose, and 1 part mass latex. So I'm just going to spray the eyeball white, and then go to red. All right, not exactly a precision instrument for fine detail. Now, this we're going to let dry for the rub out. So I'll be back in about 15-20 minutes. And I'm going to put it under a fan. So it'll take 15-20 minutes under a fan, and it'll be ready to rub out. See you then. Okay, we are now dry. So the first thing I'm going to do is use rubbing alcohol. Now this is a maroon 70% rubbing alcohol with a little bit of red and a teeny bit of black. So I'm just going to spray it. And then, now you can let this dry a little bit. It's probably better, but for our purposes, I'm going to rub it out right away. This is pure 70% rubbing alcohol. So you get it, dip it in the bucket, and then squeeze it out real good. And then just rub it off. I like to get it all off and then flip it over to get it clean. That's that part. Now, going with black FW ink, and this is mixed with 50-50 with rubbing alcohol. It doesn't have to be, but it becomes like its own solvent, so it's nice. Okay, that's the iris. Then coming in with, this is white FW, no rubbing alcohol, because we want it to cover, and a little processed blue, or I think it's called Brownie Blue or something like that. Now you can use the back of a paintbrush for the dot, but we're in a hurry, so I'm going to use the black again. All right, now, red veins. You always want to have red veins in your bloody eyebrow. Now I'm going to come out of the muscle a little bit, and with some straighter lines, just where it kind of grabs the eyeball. This is a just a regular red ink ballpoint pen. Now the veins, I'm going to put in here, because, you know, back where you can't see, there's veins, and it's creepy. Veins are always creepy. So, once you get that, we're going to go for the dead eye look, because, you know, it's no longer in the eye. And again, it's just a little bit creepy. And this is off-white. It's basically white FW ink with a little bit of 70% alcohol and maybe 50-50. And of course, to get it off-white, you need a little bit of yellow, a little bit of like antler brown, and a little bit of black, but just teensy bits. So this will give us that dead-looking zombie kind of effect. That's good. Now, I'm going to hit it with a little gloss. Now this gloss we've used before. It's Liquitex Gloss Medium. Not Gloss Medium Gel, just the Gloss Medium. Nope, that's the wrong one. I might have said a bad word if I sprayed it with that. Okay. So, get the eyeball real good. All right. Okay, we're going to blood it. And this is the Liquitex gloss gel mixed with food color. The food color thins it out a little bit, and you just got to work the right mixture that's the right amount of thickness and the right amount of darkness. And you just do it to taste. Sometimes you want thicker blood, sometimes thinner. Okay, so we're done. Now, I'm going to let this dry a little bit, and we'll be right back.